Hello and welcome to our 37th session, and in this session we are going to continue with power-ups and countdown. Now that we have the basic gameplay working with enemies chasing the player, it's time we make things even more interesting by introducing a new gameplay mechanics called as the power-ups. With this power-up activated, the table will turn for the enemy because they will go flying if they even so much as accidentally brush up against the player. As usual, let's start by launching Unity Hub. Coming to the project, if you want to continue from the previous session, you can click on this tilting_island 4 and launch the project. However, if you doesn't have this project files and if you are starting fresh, you can come into the new project. In the template, choose SRP Universal 3D, and in the project name, I am going to call this as tilting_island 5, and in eUnity project, click on create project. As Unity is getting loaded, come into your YouTube page, scroll down, and in the description click on more, and here you are provided with a Patreon link. Click on this Patreon link, come to our Junior Programmer Series Patreon page, and if you scroll down, you have a file 37 PowerUp Countdown Start Unity package. Click on this file to download it. Also download this Sathvick_layout.wlt file. Once Unity is launched, come into the project panel, select this readme file, and in the inspector, you have remove readme asset. Click on this, and in this confirmation dialog box, click on proceed. Also in the project panel, you have this input system action. Select this file, press delete or right click and choose delete, and in the confirmation window, press delete. Now, if your layout doesn't resemble the layout that you are seeing here, you can come on the right hand side to the layout and choose the Sathvick layout. If Sathvick layout is not present, go to load layout from file, browse to your download folder, select Sathvick_layout.wlt file and click on open. Come into the project panel, select asset, right click and choose import package custom package. Browse to the folder where you downloaded this 37 PowerUp Unity package just now. Select it and click on open. And in the import Unity package dialog box, see that all is selected and click on the import button. In the project panel, come into the scenes panel. You have a scene tilting_island. Double click to open this. Now you have a sample scene here. Right click and delete it, and in confirmation press on delete. Now let us add a game object to represent our power up. So if you come into the project panel here, and if you open course library, you have a folder called pickup. Open this, you have $sign, so I can open it and show it, and you have fire icon, and I am going to select this jump 1 and drag it into my hierarchy window. Now come into the inspector, and in position I will first reset it to 0, 0, 0. I will move it along the Z axis by around 3 units. Now if I press F, I will alt click and turn around, and this appears to be little small. So I will come here into scale, enable constraint proportion and scale it by 1.5 unit. And now this appears to be fine. Okay, this is fine. I am going to now call this as power up. In the inspector, come into add component, add a collider, and I will add a box collider, and see that it is exactly wrapped all around my jump. Now here in the box collider, see that this IsTrigger option is selected because we are going to use it as a trigger. Now come up for this power up. Right now there is no tag. I am going to click here on untagged. Click on add tag, and in the tag list, right now it is empty. Click on plus, and I am going to add a new tag name power up and click on save. Now in the hierarchy panel, select power up, click on the tag here and select the power up. Now it's time to convert it into a prefab. So I will come into the asset panel, close this course library, and from the hierarchy I will drag this power up into my prefab. And when it asks for create prefab or variant, click on original prefab. The logic that we are going to apply here is, we have power up here, and the power up will be collected by the player. So if you select the player, in the inspector, if you scroll down, you have player control script attached to it. I will now come into the inspector, and in the tag, I am going to attach it with the player tag. I will come into the project, and in the script I will select this player control script, double click to open it. I need to check whether the PowerUp is on or off. For this, I am going to declare a new variable. I will come after this line 14, press enter, add 2 forward slashes, and I am going to create variable to check PowerUp is on or off. Press enter, public, and the type of this variable is a boolean, and I will call this as hasPowerUp, and I will set its initial value to false and end it with semicolon. And if I move down now, after this fixed update, at the end of this closing bracket, now I will press enter twice. I am going to call OnTriggerEnter inbuilt method. So I will select it. If I come inside this, I am now going to first test for a condition if, and in open close bracket, object which is going to get collided. So you have a parameter here other which is of the type collider. If the object with which my player collided, that is this other, has a tag, I will call compare tag, add open close bracket, and inside this, in inverted comma, if it has the tag PowerUp, then I will come out of this bracket, press enter, add open close flower bracket, and inside this I am going to call my hasPowerUp variable, and I am going to set its value to true and end it with semicolon. I will press enter and I am going to call destroy, and in open close bracket I will end it with semicolon, and inside this the object that I am going to destroy is the other object, game object. This script is attached to the player. So if you just put destroy game object, then player itself gets destroyed. But I want the other object with which it collided, PowerUp, to get destroyed. So with this I will save it. Now come back to Unity, allow the script to get compiled. Now if I come here into the player, and in the inspector, if you scroll down, you have hasPowerUp here, which is initially off. But if I play the game, if I come and touch, and if I just collect the PowerUp, you can now see the PowerUp has disappeared, and in the player control, if you scroll down, you can see hasPowerUp has become on. Stop the playback. So now whenever player comes and collects the PowerUp is collected, the PowerUp is true. But now what action should take place? So to define this action, I will come into my prefab and select enemy, and in the inspector click on open. And for this enemy also, right now it is tagged untagged. I will click here and I will add a tag, click on plus here, and I am going to call this as enemy and click on save. Now I will come back here in the hierarchy, select enemy, and in the tag I am going to attach enemy tag to this. I will click on the left arrow here to come back to the scene, and now I will come into the player controls, double click to open it. So I will come back to powercontrol.cs, and here above this void OnTriggerEnter in line number 69, I will press tab and I will add 2 forward slashes, detect collision with PowerUp object. I will add a comment. I will come below this OnTriggerEnter, and after this closing bracket, press enter, add 2 forward slashes. I am going to add perform PowerUp action on collision with enemy. I will press enter. If I type on collision, you have a function here OnCollisionEnter. I am going to use this function. In case of enemy, we had not added the trigger. So if in case of our PowerUp, when we added the collider, we added IsTrigger. So we were using OnTriggerEnter. But for the enemy, we are not using it. In OnCollisionEnter, you have a parameter collision, which type is a collision type. And here we are now going to test a condition. If in open close bracket, the condition I am going to first test is whether my game object has PowerUp, whether PowerUp is true, and I have to check one more condition. I will press space, and in C# we cannot write AND directly to compare two conditions. I will add 2 ampersand sign like this, and the second condition I have to test is the collision. I am going to call this collision parameter here in the function, and if that game object parent, I am going to compare its tag. and in open close bracket, if its tag in inverted comma is equal to enemy, I will press enter and add open close flower bracket, and inside this flower bracket, as of now, I will call debug.log and in open close bracket end it with semicolon, and inside this I am now going to add a message in my console window, that is in inverted comma collided with colon space. We call this as concatenation, meaning that we are going to combine variables with strings here. Then I will add a plus sign, and I am now going to call for my collision, whichever object is getting collided, its game object name. If it is enemy, I will get enemy here, plus then I will add inverted comma to add my next string here, and here I am going to write with PowerUp set to, and I will press plus, and I am now going to call hasPowerUp variable. So this will have two values, either true or false. Now I will go to file, save this, come back here to Unity, allow the script to compile. I will come into window, general, and open the console window. I will drag this console window to the side of my gameplay. So I will set its size like this. Now if I play the game and if I rotate around and if I come and hit it, see now when I hit the collider, you are seeing the message here, see, collided with enemy and the PowerUp is set to true. So now I will stop the playback. Now instead of this message, I will clear this. I need the actual action to happen. That is, my enemy should be pushed off at a great speed. So for that, I will double click player control. I am now going to come on the top in this line number 16, press enter, add two forward slashes, create variable to hold the PowerUp strength value. And I am going to call this as public float. I will call it as PowerUp strength, and I will set it equal to 15.0f and end it with semicolon. Now scrolling down, I am now going to come into this if statement. Instead of this debug log message, I now had to add power or force to my enemy. Two forward slashes. First I have to get the enemy rigid body component. I will declare a new variable type rigid body, and I will call this as enemy rigid body, and this will be equal to, I am going to get my collision object, period, game object, and in that game object, I will call my get component lesser than greater than sign, and inside this the component I call is rigid body, and coming out of this greater than sign add open close bracket and end it with semicolon. Whatever object we are getting collided, that rigid body component is attached to this variable. Then next is add two forward slashes. This force has to be applied in the direction in which the player comes and collides. I am going to declare one more variable here, vector 3, and I will call this as away from player, and I am going to set it equal to collision game object transform position, that is enemy object transform position, subtracted by the current transform position of my player, and I will end it with semicolon. For correct implementation of this direction, I will select this entire collision game object transform position minus transform position. I will add open close bracket, and after this period I will call the function normalize. I will add two forward slashes. We are going to apply the force to the enemy rigid body. I will now call my enemy rigid body, and I am going to add force to it. I will add open close bracket and end it with semicolon. I have to give two values. First is the direction. The direction is coming from away from player, and I am going to multiply this from variable PowerUp strength, comma, the force mode that I am going to use will be period impulse, and then I will end it with semicolon. Now if I come to file, save this, come into Unity, allow the script to get compiled. Now if I play the game and if I check it, see now I will rotate around, and now if I take the power up, see now the player is applying greater force on the enemy. So I will stop the playback. Now one issue we are facing here is, sometimes when we play the game and check it, sometimes the enemy is spawned right next to the player, because if you stop, we have given the enemy to span the range from -10 to +10. So if it spans at 0, it will span exactly at the player position itself. Now one condition I want to put for my enemy is, it should not span in 3-meter radius all around my player. So it should span 3 meters away from the player. The spanning is happening through span manager, and it is attached with span manager script. So I will double click this span manager script to open it. I will come into this generate span position. I am now going to first declare this variable float span position x. I will declare it. Then I will declare float span position z, and then I will then allot its value span position x and span position z. I have to add semicolon to both the lines here. Now I will press enter. I am going to generate random x and z position. I want this spanning to happen only when the value generated by this random range is greater than 3. So to achieve this, we are going to explore another important feature in programming, which we call as loop. We will discuss this loop in detail later, call it as the do loop. So now after declaring these two variables, I will press enter, and I am going to call do. Press enter and add open close flower bracket, and in this flower bracket, some task is done continuously until I will come out of this close flower bracket, press space, while, and in open close bracket, I have to put the condition and then end it with semicolon. So this is how we write a loop statement. A particular command is executed when this particular condition is true, and the condition I am going to test in while is, I am going to call for a math function mathf. You have a function called absolute, and in open close bracket I will call my span position x. I will come out of the bracket is less than 3f, and I should also test another condition. I will add 2 ampersand sign, and again I will call this math f absolute value in open close bracket. Now I will call the span position z, and even this, if it is less than 3f, only then now I will take this entire line, 3 lines here, cut this here and put it inside the do code block. This span position x and span position z values will be continuously generated, and only if it is more than 3 along both x and z, only then that value will be passed on to this vector 3. If I now go to file and if I save it, if I come back to Unity and if I check it, when I click the play button, the enemy will not be spanned close to the player. So now if I stop and play, every time when I play it, the enemy will be spanned always 3 units away from the player. Now stop the playback. You have got an introduction to loop with this do while loop. Now our next mission is, when I take this power up, the power that the player is going to get should be available for a limited time. For example, only 5 seconds. This concept, which we call it as coroutine, we are going to implement it in our next session.